So this should look familiar to some of y'all, which means you're in the right room. That would be nice.
I just came here because...
I appreciate y'all being here on a Friday evening at like 5 p.m. because like ain't nobody got jobs or like other stuff to do. Right?
Yeah. I'm only 11 and I skipped school for this.
That's good. I mean, I don't know if I want to endorse that, but like,
I'll endorse that.
I'll endorse that. Yeah. Skip school. Whatever.
Yeah.
I
only live once.
I turned out
I
fine.
have like 2 hours left until like the May campaign for my hero.
Oh yeah, so
yeah.
I'm just waiting until after much.
It's like 1 day of school isn't going to be the end of the world.
1 day of school's not a big deal, right? I skipped like a whole year once. It was fine.
Yeah.
It turned out great.
The good thing is that I didn't have to do my homework.
All right. So we're gonna get into this. So a little bit about this. Like, I do panels at conventions and everything. And the real reason of this is like they give you free passes if you do panels. It's kind of great. You can go to conventions for free. Also, I enjoy this, but you know. I'm actually a PhD student at Texas Women's University in Denton. My name is Will. I'm getting my PhD in counseling psychology. A little bit about me and who I am and what I've done here. I've got my master's in counseling. I lived in Chicago, got my master's there, and now I work as a therapist, private practice, and I also teach college. So like I'm used to big rooms larger than this with people much more bored than you are right now. Because like the joy of life is teaching intro to psychology, and they're just like, oh my god, like, I'm just here because I have to be, right? So we'll try to keep it lively at least. My research interest is in social isolation. So for my dissertation to get my PhD, my big research project is about hikikomori, which is a sort of Japanese disorder of isolation, which at some point in this I will plug that like my dissertation is coming up. Could you take it, please? Which means I have cards and stuff, but if you're interested in that, I can give you one, and you can just check my website and all that when it comes out. That would be helpful to me, because you know, if they're going to give me a PhD in basically doing anime stuff, like it would be appropriate for y'all to help me with that, right? Also, I do a little bit of relevantly esports consulting, so I work with a college team that does Overwatch. So I've done a little bit of that. I still don't profess to be any good at Overwatch, but I try, which is sort of the important part, right?
That's what matters.
That's what matters, right? Just don't play ranked and don't play Symmetra, right? Symmetra's my favorite character. I know I'm trash, it's fine. Anyway, other things I've done research on Asian American experiences. I was a drug counselor for a while. I worked at a high school in the area that had like an anti-drug program for kids, which was great because you got like 17-year-old heroin addicts and you're just like, whoa, man, like dang. So like, school's probably pretty weird now, huh, right? Like you have a different life than a lot of people here. So had some fun with that. And to give you some frame of reference of where I'm coming from, my favorite anime include Eden of the East, G Gundam, which is the greatest show ever made by a human, because it has a horse that pilots a horse Gundam.
Oh my god, really?
I'm not even kidding, that's actually a plot point. He has a name, he's a character, it's great. Also things like iShield 21. I love sports anime, sports manga, because especially as a person that's in America, where they're like, let me teach you about football. And you're like, I know about football. I'm a white dude. Like, I know all about football. Don't worry about it. Prince of Tennis. I haven't watched Prince of Tennis because I can't quite do it. But like basketball, water polo, like whatever, man, I'll watch it. I don't know why. It's a personal failing of mine. And also, since this is my panel, you don't get to quite judge me about my terrible anime taste, even if it is quite terrible. But we'll talk a little bit more about how bad my anime taste is here in a moment. I feel like everybody has like slightly weird anime taste, unless they're that one person who's just like, I like Attack on Titan, and you're like, everyone likes Attack on Titan. Right? Liking Attack on Titan in One Piece isn't a personality, Jerry. What do you do? So, reason for doing this. So I have a close friend of mine who we would spend a long time arguing about different anime we'd seen. And the big one was Evangelion, because Evangelion is like one of my favorite anime of all time, because it's literally one of the greatest things that's ever been created. It also will like mess you up on a deep interpersonal level, which is kind of why I like it. It's like sort of destructive in its own way. And the good part, it's never going to end. They're just going to remake it until everyone dies, and then remake it again. So it'll be great. So I had a lot of discussions about this. But also in my field, in psychology, we do a lot of things of how do you communicate about things? How do you talk to people about stuff? And it occurred to me that these things could go together. And oftentimes, like, you ever had that experience where you have like a deep conversation about something you actually like hopefully with someone who also likes it too, right? Feels pretty nice. Pretty different to like, oh, hey, I like the show, and they look at you and they go, no, I've never seen it. And then that conversation ends, right? And it happens all the time to me. Like someone's like, oh, this show is so great. And you're like, oh, okay. And it doesn't go anywhere, right? So I thought maybe we could do something to change that. And also the skill we're going to use today, which I'm going to teach you, is used in my field a lot for training. Because I don't know if y'all know how therapy works, but like when you're talking to other people that do therapy, they don't see your same client. So you have to tell them what your experience with that person is, right? And you have to do it accurately. You have to convey as much information as you reasonably can, and then they can talk to you about that and help you, like, give you like pointers or thoughts or things like that. But the thing is, we don't ever use it after training ends most of the time. Then you just like see your own clients and never talk to anyone about it, and it kind of isn't so good. So my thought was like, hey, how can we make this and use this to create more discussion, right? Also, I just argue a lot, specifically about Evangelion. Like, I have like vivid memories of sitting in a bar at like 4:30 on like a Thursday, being like, "Look, man, let me tell you." Maybe it's not the coolest thing ever to do, but like, it was part of my life. So, this is the clinical textbook version of what we're going to do today. Please don't read that. Please don't even try. It's a lot. That's one sentence. No, it's 2 sentences. I'm sorry. That's like 2 sentences. It's a paragraph. It's not good. This is what happens when you like let academic people like describe something to you. Let's do it better. Let's do it a little easier. Let me break this down for you a little better. A case conceptualization, that's what we're doing here. It's one of the 3 C's, right? Case conceptualization, it's just a report. It's a report based on what has happened, what useful information came out of things, you know, what is happening. And this can be a lot of different things. It can be one thing. It depends on sort of how you see the person, what your relationship to them is. But you put this all together and you say, here's the explanation of what's going on. And then the other people get to say like, oh, okay, well, let's talk about that. Why do you think that? Why this, right? And when we're doing this in my field, we look a lot at emotional stuff, right? Like what feelings do they have? If they're depressed and they come in and they're like, hey, I'm sad. That's information, right? Also things that maybe they won't tell you. One of the joys of therapy is like sometimes people like go to therapy where you're supposed to talk to the people and then they don't talk to you and then they just stare at you for a while and then you like just gotta figure it out. And this can be other things like assessments, right? If you take a test or like an IQ test or an achievement test or something like that, that can be all that too. But this gives us, hey, let's paint a picture of our client's experience. Let's talk about what they're going through, and then let's talk about what that means, right? And this also leads to us to say like, hey, if your experience looks like this, what do we want to be different? And that's an important part of it, because if you don't focus on what they want and what they need, what's the point, right? And so we're going to address that a little bit through what we're doing here. So the 3 big questions for this are, for me as a therapist or counselor, how do I understand my client, right? How do I understand what's going on with them? Which makes sense, right? If I don't understand, I'm not going to do a good job, right? The second one is like, what stuff needs to be addressed? What's going on? What do we want to change? And the third one is like, what personally do I think about stuff, about life, about psychology, that informs what I'm telling you here, right? And this is where we're going to bring this in and say, okay, we're all going to have different opinions here. And that's going to be the fun part of this, is like, someone in this room, even if you like exactly the same anime and exactly the same characters, you're going to have different perspectives on it because you're going to have different life experiences. Hopefully. If you've all had the same life experiences, y'all should write a book. Because it would make money. But anyway, break it down even further. We're doing 3 things today. And this is the only 3 things you got to remember for this. Because hopefully you can take this out of this and do something with this and have a good conversation. The 3 things are, what do you see? This is when you describe what happens, right? So if you're telling me about an anime, you have to tell me what happens with this character, what are they about, what do they do, right? Because you might be talking to someone who's never seen it before. Now, we're going to try to be kind here and like not spoil the entire plot of every series we talk about, so like keep that in mind. You know, some of them are like, look, if we're going to talk about Naruto, like Naruto's been done for like, I don't know how many years. More years than I can remember.
Never talk about Boruto.
Let's just never talk about Boruto. Okay, that's a hot take, but like, fine, I got you, right? But the first one is what you're seeing, because you might be describing this to someone who's never seen it. And that's okay. Actually, that's an encouraged part of this. Because if you talk to somebody who's never seen it before, you might make them want to see it. Or the opposite, depending on what you're talking about. But, you know, we're not going to go there. the second one is how do you understand the information, right? What does that mean to you? How do you make sense of it? And this is where it gets more subjective, right? Because we could rattle off the plot of an anime, and that would be the same, roughly, as long as we all remember it mostly correctly. But what does it mean to you? How do you understand it? Could be very different person to person, right? And then the third part is, what do you want to be done? What can be done, right? So if we're talking about a show that's still going, what do you want to see happen? Now, like, of course, like, please don't tell me what your fanfic ideas are, because, like, I don't need that in my life. I already read enough of it on my own. But, like, what would you want to see happen? And for shows that have been going on a long time, you can kind of cheat with this, right? If we're going to talk about, like, Dragon Ball has been on for, like, longer than I've been alive, practically. So, like, a lot of character growth has happened, right? So you can kind of cheat and be like, this is what I think should happen more so, right? But I'm going to do this in a way, I'm going to do an example for you, and whenever you feel comfortable, just please jump in. Like, raise hand, say whatever you want to say, I don't care. Parliamentary procedure be damned, right? Do participate, because like if I just sit here and talk to you about this is going to get real old real quick, because you're going to be like, oh, this weird white guy has hot takes about anime, and like, that's not what this is about. This is
credit for this class?
yes. Bring me a form and I'll sign it.
Nice.
I have a position. I could write professor on it, even though it's not technically my title. It's fun. Yeah, you'll get credit for this. Especially if you go out and do more of it in public, because like, really, I just want like better conversations around stuff. Like, I want to not be at an anime con and they're like, oh, I love this anime, and they're like, I've never heard of it. God, I'm so tired of that. Right? It's so annoying. So, I mentioned Naruto. You thought this was going to be Evangelion. It used to be. But now it's Naruto. So I'm going to talk to you about Sasuke. Y'all know Sasuke, right? Kind of broody, emo kid, a lot of Hot Topic looking stuff going on. Edgelordy. His parents are all dead. Like every anime protagonist.
I hate life.
He hates life. If you've seen the 8-Bridge series, he hates Fog, too. That's a reference that like one person in this audience is going to get. I love Naruto, the Abridged series. God, so good.
That it ended.
It sucks that it ended abruptly, like every single Abridged series ever has.
Except Dragon Ball.
Except Dragon Ball.
Yeah.
And maybe Yu-Gi-Oh! Kind of.
Yu-Gi-Oh! Never ends.
So, let me tell you a little bit about Sasuke, because y'all don't know, obviously. If y'all want to like fact check me and like add stuff, please do. That would be helpful. Like, I'm not going to recount to you the entire events of Naruto from memory. I can't do it, and it would be boring because it wouldn't have many ninja fights in it, at least graphical ones. So here's what I think we're seeing with Sasuke. So like one of the things you see early on, he's very isolated from other people, right? He has to go to like ninja middle school or whatever it is, kindergarten, whatever. I don't know, man. Everything takes place in a high school or high school equivalent because anime, and all the protagonists sit in that one seat, and there's always the weird kids sit around, next to the window, and all the weird kids sit around them, right? I get it. That's how it works. But I think you see isolation, right? From the very beginning of the series, there are people that are like, hey, Sasuke, want to be friends? No. Hey, Sasuke, like, want to be romantically entangled? Absolutely not, right? This is an isolation thing, right? He is aloof from people. And part of that is him making those choices, straight up telling people no, right? But part of it is he's a different person than other people, right? Like, he has the special eyes or whatever that make him just like, I copies everybody's jutsu. I don't care. I don't gotta train, nothing. Which, like, is kind of a dick thing to say, honestly. But, like, all right, Sasuke, right? He's like, I watched you do your special move. Now I can do it. I'm like, all right, buddy. Chill out, right? But he's very isolated. And he has sort of poor interpersonal skills. Like, does weird things and, like, says weird things. And, like, does that sort of, like, edgy anime protagonist thing to people. Where he's just like, I have to kill my brother and like avenge my family. I'm like, chill out, bro. We're at recess. Like, maybe just like back it up like a couple steps. Like, talk about the game or like cards or whatever people like. You know, whatever action figures are popular that year. Like, didn't you like go through that, right? Also, there's like an outright refusal of people that like care about him, and I say like love here in like a non-fanficky kind of way, but like. Someone who's, like, there are multiple young women in the series that are like, oh, Sasuke's so dreamy, I would, like, totally want to hook up with that. And he's just like, I don't care. Vengeance.
I'm an avenger.
Yeah, he's like, he has this, like, light Batman emo thing going on. Like, ugh, try. Vengeance. Like, okay, whatever. and that extends to friendship too, right? Naruto is like, I will literally beat you half to death until we are friends, which I wouldn't recommend. Just so you know, I wouldn't recommend you go and like fight somebody and be like, we're best friends now. It doesn't work that way usually.
Hey, Naruto had to do it a bunch of times.
Naruto had to do it a bunch of times, to be fair. And like, shonen anime, it's more likely to work. So like, I'm not going to discount it as a strategy, but like, maybe don't do that.
What do you think Todoroki and Midoriya became friends?
If you fight enough, spoilers, we're going to talk about that. Because it's fun, right? Also, poor judgment. Yeah, so like, I'm going to run off at any opportunity and try to murder my brother, but I don't know where he is, or like, if I have power, I want to do that, but I don't care, I'm going to do it. I mean, that's not a great thing to do, right? And like, also, like, whatever, man, I don't care about anything. I'm just going to beat up the next strongest kid that comes in there, and like, that works if you're in like the exam arc, right? But like, it also doesn't work if you're supposed to be doing like teamwork, and like, not trying to murder your friends. That's not a good choice, right? I wouldn't recommend it, generally speaking. Unless your relationship is born on mutual murder, but wouldn't recommend. Also, weird choice in colleagues. If you notice, like Sasuke throughout the entire series of Naruto has some like strange people that he hangs out with. And like sometimes that's by necessity, like Naruto is strange, but he's the main character, so like we give him a pass. But like Naruto like willingly hangs out with like Michael Jackson, the snake charmer, which like is problematic for a lot of reasons. Like the guy's like, I want your body. Sasuke's like, weird, but like, all right, we could be friends, kind of. I'll learn to summon your snake. It's not a euphemism for anything. Ooh, yeah, no, something wrong with it. I know. I think so too, right? I didn't make it up. That's just a thing that happened. It was accurate. It was like, oh, I've got this like chick around that's in love with me. I'll drag her around because she can like heal me and stuff. That's a interesting choice. You could do that if you want. And also, like, people that don't necessarily want to be around him, that, like, also have ulterior motives that are like, oh, let's use each other to get our goals. And, like, that is not necessarily what I would consider, like, powerful friendship, but, like, okay, you know? I'm not going to discount it, but, like, eh. Any other things of, like, what do we see? Did I miss something that was, like, really powerful and interesting?
I mean,
Or
every
did
time he has a friend, he kind of... I mean, it's more of an acquaintance than anything. He always uses them as tools.
Right, like anytime you meet somebody, it's like a means to an end, right? Like for example, mentorship. Like he's a mentor, or his mentor is Kakashi, right? And Kakashi like is the only other guy who like kind of understands how his power works, which makes sense,
Yeah,
right?
but he also had because of the Sharingan.
Because he got the Sharingan, right?
Yeah.
But like also, he's very explicit about like just teach me the awesome stuff you have to do, and then just leave me alone.
I mean, yeah, when you go look at his backstory and everything, when they go into in detail to the Shippuden,
Yeah.
like Itachi even says like he did it on purpose. I mean, like Itachi's like one of the most respected people in Naruto, just because of what he did.
Yeah, depending on what your point of view is, and depending on how much of it you've read.
I mean, it's just like he basically followed the rules of what the leader said of that village.
Yeah, and like the longer that goes on, the more like weird and complicated it gets, which is like, ugh, right? Yeah. I mean, look, the entirety of Naruto, if you want to, like, press me about it, is, like, about the power of nepotism, bloodlines, and who you know. Because, like, the only useful characters in Naruto are people that are, like, trained by important people. And, like, God help you if you got one of the two ninjas that doesn't really have an actual name as your master because then you're posed. Like, or there's, like, Tenten, who's, like, magic abilities, she throws stuff at people. And her entire usefulness to the plot is she throws stuff at Neji for training, and I'm like, that's... I don't like that. Like, what is her ability? She throws things. They're ninjas, they all throw stuff. Yeah, but she's, like, better at it. Alright.
Poor
sure.
Tenten.
Okay, poor Tenten, right? Except she's wildly OP in the games. If you play the Naruto, like, fighting games, Tenten is wildly overpowered because she just like throws stuff at you from across the screen and you're like, oh god, I hate this. How does it end? Yeah. So let's talk about how we understand. Hold on. Got ahead of myself. Let's talk about how we understand this, right? And this is where we're going to differ, right? So if you have stuff, just like bring it up. But a big thing for me is like a loss of attachment, right? When you're young, you attach to your parents, your caregivers, whoever, right? And that becomes problematic when your entire family gets murdered in front of you, right? Because you don't have parents to attach to anymore, or loved ones, or things like that. And like, that's a big deal, right? A loss of that in the real world, like just an accident or something, is a big deal. But like in this case, even more so, right? That's a huge problem. And also, it kind of feels important to me to say that like this is a normal thing that happens to people who are traumatized, right? If you witness like something horrific in front of you, it probably makes sense that you're going to be a little surly and like have a hard time making friends and maybe be unhealthily obsessed with things, right? Especially if you like have a reason to be that way. And he kind of has a reason to be that way. Now, whether that's a good idea to do it, different problem. But it kind of makes some sense there, right? Also, a big deal is how do you measure your worth as a person, right? And I think we all have different answers to that question. Like for some people, it's like how long or short is your Crunchyroll queue, right? Because you've watched enough or not enough anime, depending on what your point of view is. But like, if you're Sasuke, how does he measure his worth? Like, what is the only thing that matters?
Power.
Power, right? Power for what? Killing his brother, right? So power for vengeance. That is your only measure of worth. How do you know you have enough power?
You fight.
When you kill your brother, right? Yes, good job, right? Except that's hard because, like, how do you know how much power your brother has? How many times are you going to get your butt kicked before you got to go do that? How many times are you going to be alive to do that, right? That's a problem. And then, like, also, what if you actually do that? What if you actually get enough power to do it? Well, then what?
Yeah.
Do you like go work at the Starbucks? Like, it's over, man. That was the only thing you had. And like that's why the old adage is like if you embark on revenge, dig 2 graves, because like either it's gonna kill you or like metaphorically it's gonna kill you, right? And that's kind of a problem. Like what are you supposed to do after that? If you only define yourself by this one thing, what happens when the one thing happens or doesn't? There's no other plan, and that becomes a problem because you kind of have to keep living, or at least like you're expected to keep living. Might be the argument.
You could always off himself.
You could always take the other way out, but like, number one, not endorsing it. Number two, like, that would be kind of metal for like a shonen like kids series. He's like, well, I did it. I'm like, oh dang, like you can't sell this to children? What the hell? Right? That would be bad. And that's where I'm getting this meaning piece, right? You get to choose how you make meaning of your life. All of us do. We all get to have different versions of this. And the thing is, he does not a very good job of it. His like meaning is like, I learned this new technique and then I can go use it to kill my brother. And you're like, oh my god, dude, like, you learned it and it's cool. Like, why can't it just be cool? Why can't it be like you have friends? Why can't it be you passed the exam? You know, that kind of stuff. And I get why, because like his whole character arc is that. But like also, if you don't take time for any of the other things, then like, why does it matter? You know. Any other alternative ideas here of like what you make of this, how you understand it? It's okay if no. We'll move on eventually. But no one has any other ideas. I'm glad everyone agrees with me in this room. That's really all I wanted. That's why I do panels. I just want people to agree with me all the time. An occasional round of applause wouldn't go on. No, I'm just kidding. Right? So let's talk about what do you want to do. So what I would want to see happen is like, let's repair some of those breaks, right? For those of you that maybe have had disruption or had rough childhood, you can't. Trick question, right? You also have to be between the ages of like 12 and 17, because if you're 18, you can't save the world anymore. If you're 18, you're the old character in the anime now. It's deeply troubling. Yeah, or the villain. Yeah, or you're the villain. Yeah, deeply troubling that that's how it works, but that is how it works. Also, like, give him a hug and like a non-creepy like Orochimaru kind of a hug. Like, just be there for it. Like, hey, I get it. It's tough. Like, I get it.
Sakura gave him a hug and he still left.
Still left, right? What a jerk. Maybe you need a different hug or more hugs. I don't know.
Naruto.
People always make that argument, like, did they need more hugs or less hugs, depending on how bad they turned out, right? But like the Naruto point's an interesting one, right?
I don't feel like it should be like it depends on the person who hugs him.
It depends on the person. Like maybe it matters less or more. I don't know. But Naruto's an interesting point, right? Naruto's a guy that like knows kind of what it's like. Like, he didn't watch his parents get murderized in front of him, right? But, like, Naruto grew up without parents. Naruto grew up in a hard lifestyle. And, like, if anyone should understand that in the whole village, it should be Sasuke, right? Or at least they should sort of have an idea of how they work. And that they become friends makes sense to me, but that there's the tension, you know, it's kind of like, dude, the one person that can actually listen to you and kind of understand, and you're just like, no, go away, right? That's a normal thing to do to some level, but yeah, right? All right. So that was our example. Again, feel free to jump in whenever you want. We're doing it so far, so let's just keep going. Who here seen Toradora? One of the greatest anime in the world, right? Right? Oh, it's so good. It's on Crunchyroll, yes? Well, it depends on how you view things, but yes, kind of. Toradora, if y'all don't know, it's the premise of the anime is it's like sort of a romantic thing, except the two main characters are each trying to get to their crush, right? And each of the main characters has the friend who is the other person's crush, right? So the idea is like, you help me, I help you. Yeah? That's the whole premise of the show. And Taiga is the female protagonist. She's about like yay tall. She is very tiny. She has a lot of stuff going on. One of her classical things is she hits people with wooden swords whenever she's angry, which I know she's an anime protagonist, shocker. But like, she's very interpersonally difficult, right? And she's the female protagonist, so like you're supposed to grow to like her over time, ideally. Depending on how you view stories, but like you're supposed to like main characters, right? But Taiga has a lot of problems getting along with people, right? A lot of people think she's really surly and are like afraid of her. And she has like a nickname. Her nickname is the Palm Top Tiger because she's tiny and her last name sounds like tiger. It's creative, I know. But people are afraid of her. People don't care for her. She's intense. People think that she's like angry, which she is, kind of, right? People have a hard time relating to her. Yeah, she is a tsundere, like in every single definition of that word, but like that would be spoilers for me to like expand on that for you. But yeah, she has a hard time, and of course, like every anime, it's in a high school, so like of course that's difficult, right? Because if you watched any anime, like the most respected, most well-liked person is like the student council president or whatever, who's like a nice person, and they stay after class to help clean up, and you know, right? At least something like that. And interestingly, that's the person that Taiga's in love with. Taiga's in love with like the assistant student council person who's like, oh, he's so talented and smart and funny and he does all these things and everybody likes him. But you kind of see your problem, right? If you're not super likable and people are afraid of you, how is that person going to like you, right? Important. And this brings up the point of like struggles with relationships to men, right? So without going too much into the backstory, Taiga spends a lot of the first episode trying to beat the living snot out of the main character with a sword because of reasons, and not particularly like great reasons depending on your logic of how to use violence. But Taiga's backstory is like her parents divorced, and her dad like straight up was like, nah, I've got a new family, bye. And I don't know if anyone's ever had that happen, or if you've had a parental divorce or whatever, but like that kind of messes you up a little bit. Like it has the potential to mess you up as like a young girl or whatever else you might be, of like, your parent doesn't want you. In fact, your parent wants this other person in this other family, right? And Taiga's life is sort of weird. Like, she lives off of her parents, her dad's money, but like dad doesn't really want anything to do with her and she doesn't want anything to do with him. So it becomes this weird thing of like, how do I relate to anyone? And especially men, right? If you're the person you relate to the most in your life is your male father figure and he's not around and you hate him, that kind of becomes complicated, right? If your only model of what that looks like is your dad, who's the worst, where are you going to learn different? And that's sort of a problem for her throughout the series. Also, she solves problems with violence, which, like, don't do, just so you know. Like, I don't endorse solving all your problems with violence. I wouldn't recommend it. It just doesn't usually go well, is the first thing. But, like, second, it's a crime, and don't do crimes. Especially if you say, I told you to do it. Like, please don't do that, right?
It's only a crime if you get caught.
It's only a crime if you get caught. I don't know that's technically true, but I like your enthusiasm.
It's true, I promise.
Well, there's so many expert sources here, so I guess I have to believe. No. But she uses violence, right? And outside of most shonen anime, like, using violence to solve problems is not a particularly good way of doing things, right? Like, it's okay. Like, I love G Gundam where they're like, let's fight about it, and then we'll understand each other as men, right? Not so much in Toradora. Like, it's a romance anime. They're like, I don't know, let's, like, talk about it. And she's like, I will beat you half to death. It's like, maybe, like, dial back. I'm sure there's people that like violence, but, like, right? Also, she's very alienated from other people, right? She lives alone in an apartment and doesn't know anybody, has, like, one fairly good friend, but, like, has problems with them even. And there's a lot of disconnection there. And that happens, you know. I don't know if y'all have ever been in high school. I have. It was awful. Wouldn't recommend. But it's very easy at that time in your life to feel disconnected from other people. Like, you're the only person that's going what you're going through, right? And she might be right that she is the only person going through it, but, like, that maybe isn't the point, you know? And also, this kind of goes hand in hand with the next piece of, like, she can't live independently. And she's not supposed to, by the way. Like, if you're, like, 15 or whatever, you're not supposed to necessarily be able to, like, own an apartment and, like, know how to do everything in it. But she lives independently, and she can't cook food for herself, she can't do dishes, she can't clean, she can't do laundry, which are, like, all normative things that you either learn how to do at some point or people do for you, right? And, like, some of you are like, no one does that. Someone still does that for me, and I'm, like, 35, and I'm like, okay, well, you got a good gig, so, like, you know, whatever. But this is a problem, because, like, the main character, the male protagonist, goes into her apartment and is like, oh my god, like, you live here? Like, how? And also, why?
You live like this.
Yeah, you live like this. And, like, I don't know, any of y'all lived in a place that was, like, messy or, like, clean in a way that you were not comfortable with, but, like, you couldn't change? I have, right? It's not fun for your mental health, because you're like, oh my god, I wish it was anything but this, right? And even if you're living yourself that way, like, that impacts you somehow. And the inability to do those skills also probably means no one ever taught her those skills. And that's trouble, right? Because if you, like, let your teenager live independently without the life skills to do so, you are a not very good parent, which we already know, right? But, because, again, anime protagonists, they're not dead, they're just bad parents. That's the other one. Your parents are either dead or terrible. There's only one good parent, maybe two in all of anime. Fight me. Anyway.
Deku's mom.
Yes.
Deku's mom is
Yes.
the one.
Deku's mom.
Deku's mom is one. I don't know if the other one.
Bakugo's mom's
I would argue Bakugo's mom might be the second one, right? We'll get there, though. Right? Yeah. Oh. Oh. I'm not gonna go there. Every panel I do, someone brings up Full Metal, and they're like, oh, their mom. I'm like, ah. It's either the mom or the dog. And I'm like, please don't. You're not wrong. You're not wrong. I have that shirt too. I'm a bad person. Yeah.
Don't bring that moment back to me.
I have a friend who had that shirt, and, like, the voice actor for, is it Show Tucker? Is that who it is? The voice actor for Show Tucker was there, and he goes up to the guy and he's like, can you sign this for me? And the guy was like, you're a bad person. Like, what's wrong with you? And it's like, short answer, it's a lot, but just, like, he'll pay you, so sign it. Like, wow, you're bad. Like, evil even. Like, I'm the person that voiced that character, and, like, I am even disgusted. New anime convention achievement. I disgusted a guest.
I don't like it. Why did you do this to me?
So let's think about this. Like, how do we understand this, right? So I'm gonna, like, broken record this again, but, like, attachment wounds, right? If your parents, like, say they don't want you anymore, that's a big deal, right? Especially as, like, a younger person. Especially as, like, a teenager, yeah? It's like, oh, wow, that sucks. Like, all I want is for someone to tell me they love me and they want me. And they're like, no, actually, jokes, no one actually wants you. And, like, the thing for Taiga is both of her parents don't really want her, weirdly. Like, she has two parents, just like everybody else, but, like, dad has a new family, doesn't want her, and I think, like, mom has a new family, too, or something, and, like, mom gave up on her at some point. It's not great, right? You don't like that. Like, oh, yeah, both of my parents don't really love me that much. And, like, look at all you idiots with all your two functioning parents that, like, love you. Whatever, man. Right? That sucks. Right? Taiga's family sucks. Like, a lot. Like, I don't think we meet the dad. I don't think we meet mom in the series. If I'm remembering that correctly. But like we meet grandparents, and the grandparents are like slightly more chill. And they're like, well, we'll maybe accept you with some conditions. I'm like, well, that's not great, but that's better, weirdly. But also this kind of makes sense, right? You ever met somebody who's like just real surly, but like for a good reason? Like they've been through some stuff, something bad happened to them, and they're like, well, screw the world. And you're like, well, that kind of makes sense, right? There's a certain level of that for Taiga here, of like, it kind of makes sense if your dad's like, yeah, deuces, I'm out. Like, yeah, I would be mad about that, right? Because like sometimes we get mad at our parents for like much less, right? Like, damn, mom, you're smothering me. And it's like, her parents just left. Like, no one cares, right? And I think it makes sense to me to like push away from people, right? One of the most normal responses to someone who's been hurt is to just push people as far away as possible, right? Because if you push people away, they can't hurt you anymore. Goes the logic. The thing is, that doesn't work. Because either you die alone, which is like a lot of people's not super #1 greatest goal, but like the other one is, people can still hurt you even if you aren't close to them. They just have to use different methods, right? But she has something right here. Often we're very close to our parents or our caregivers, right? Like we share a lot of time with them and emotional experiences and stuff about our lives. And those people are very close to you. And one of the core paradoxes of being a human person, and in fact, in this case, an anime character, because sometimes being a human and an anime character are not the same thing, but sometimes they are. One of the paradoxes is, if you let someone in, they can hurt you the worst, right? You've heard that, right? Like people are like, I don't want to date because I've been hurt and I can't let someone in again, right? It's that kind of a thing, except it's a parent in this case, right? So what do we do? What do you want to happen here? Like for me, part of that is have a better experience, right? Meet someone in your life who is male or masculine presenting, whatever they want to be. Meet somebody who can give you a different experience of parenting, right? A parent who actually cares about you, a parent who wants you, who does things for you, right? Or a romantic partner who is like, yeah, I actually want and love you and accept you the way you are. Not with conditions, not with do this or else, but just cares, right? Because for a lot of people, that's what therapy's about. You go to therapy and someone actually listens to you for the first time in a long time. And for some people, that's all it takes. For some people, all it takes is someone to listen to them. And if you're used to no one listening to you, you become very different as a person, right? And so I think that's part of it. Also, engagement in social relationships. That's part of what happens in the show. She gets more close to more people. And in fact, like reaches out for the person that she has the crush on, right? Gets ready to confess to him and does all that stuff, right? Which, it's a romance anime, so we like that, right? That's the most dramatic part of the scene, right? We know they actually confess to each other, because that's not really a thing we do in the United States, but it's like a huge thing in anime in Japan. I get it, it's fine. There's even like a whole bit, which like I never understood until someone explained it to me, about like an indirect kiss is a thing. If you don't know what this is, like maybe Google it, but like have safe search on. But like it's a thing in the show, and I'm like, what is that? What is that even? I don't want to ask anyone because like I might get an answer, and I don't want that, right? But the other one is like social skills help, right? If people think you are a surly, ferocious, mean person, you got some work to do. Because you can be that, right? You can be mean to people, who cares? But if you want to have supportive, connecting relationships, you probably don't open with that. You know what I mean? Like you probably at least be like sort of kind to people in passing every once in a while. Like, oh, hi, Jerry, how's it going? You know, like you probably should be a little nicer at least. But also, like, how do you talk to people? Anyone have that class in school? I wish, right? Like, not always. And your parents are supposed to do some of that socialization for you, but like, Taiga doesn't do that so hot. So someone, like a teacher, could be like, so I noticed that you have a hard time. Let's talk about it. Here's how you make friends with people. Here's how you connect to people, you know. And like, that's not always gonna work because like maybe the teacher is like not very good at it themselves or whatever, but like someone taking an interest would matter. And like skills training is a thing. I run a group that does Dungeons and Dragons where we just like teach people how to have social skills. And I know it's Dungeons and Dragons and that seems counterproductive, but that's the joy of it. Because you're like, hey, talk to this fictional person. If you're rude to them, I'm gonna make your life harder, right? Because I'm gonna teach you, like, don't be rude to people, right? But something to help her social skills, I think would go a long way, right? any other things that feel appropriate to people that have seen it or people that are just hearing this for the first time? Because the next one is free for all. We're just going to do it together and see what happens. So this is your last moment for a structured intervention. Silence.
I'm just thinking right now.
I got you. Well, this next one is going to be easier for y'all because I guarantee you, if you haven't seen this anime, you've seen this anime.
I don't know.
Just wait.
Yeah.
Y'all have seen My Hero, right? Some of you more specifically than others because you're dressed as the
That
characters.
was one of my least favorite characters. My
For
all-time-
good reason, I would argue.
Yeah.
Bakugo is the worst.
It's because
But, like, we're gonna talk about it.
I
It's
did
my
have a major
favorite thing.
bully problem in fourth grade.
That's the thing, right? That's what we're gonna get to. So Bakugo. For those of you who have not seen My Hero Academia, which is literally 0 people in the audience, My Hero Academia is a anime. And it takes place in a high school where they're learning to be superheroes. And Bakugo is not the main character, but he's like
He's like one of the protagonists.
he's a secondary protagonist, I would argue. He's also the worst.
Yes.
He's a dick.
Yes.
Just let's call a spade a spade. He's awful, right? But Bakugo's history is as follows. If I will start, and someone else I'm sure will fill it in because like y'all have seen more episodes than me and/or are more passionate about it. But Bakugo is kind of the worst, yes. But Bakugo is a young child. He figures out his quirk, right? And your quirk in My Hero, if you haven't seen it, is your special ability, right? Bakugo's happens to be super freaking awesome. Bakugo can blow stuff up with his sweat.
As is the
Oh,
first
yeah,
part of the
nitroglycerin.
name. Bakugo, yeah.
Yeah, and all the names are like supposed to be ironic, but none of us
Oh,
speak
yeah.
Japanese that way, so sorry, Horikoshi, we don't speak your language, so we don't get your
It's
puns.
weird how I still know
Anyway.
Midoriya's zodiac sign.
Look, man, there's some weird stuff in anime data books, all right?
Oh,
Yes.
is it? Oh, yeah. He's Cancer, right?
Yeah, he's a cancer.
Yeah, okay.
Potential.
I knew that.
But Bakugo's kind of the worst, right? His whole claim to fame in the first part of the thing is he bullies the main character, which you would not think makes him a likable character and a protagonist, but here we are.
He's the number one like person who was like
Yeah, he always wins the top poll.
He always wins the top poll. Now, why do you think he's popular, by the way?
You know what?
He
He's not
looks
very
cool.
good.
He's
I
angry.
don't know what it is. People think he's hot for some reason. I don't get
Yeah,
why.
yeah, I don't get it.
Hot
either.
cause explosions.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was a bad
Yeah,
joke.
fire.
I think maybe.
Loud people tend to get more attention.
Oh yeah, right? Like Bakugo is in your face, loud, angry, surly kind of a person. He's also sort of edgelordy, which I think like gets a lot of people. Like the same Sasuke crowd is like, ooh, I like me an emotionally unavailable, surly young man.
I remember,
Don't quote me on that. That's not actually accurate to my experience. But
I remember watching the first episode of My Hero Academia for the first time, and my mom was like right there next to me, and I was looking at Bakugo, and I was like, oh god, I know my mom's gonna hate me if I like this man. And I was like,
and maybe
"I'm
that's
glad I
part of the problem, right? Like Bakugo is the one who your parents. In my experience, but
I remember watching the first episode of My Hero Academia for the first time, and my mom was like right there next to me, and I was looking at Bakugo, and I was like, oh god, I know my mom's gonna hate me if I like this man. And I was like,
and
"I'm
maybe
glad I
that's
don't."
part of the problem, right? Like Bakugo is the one who your parents are like, please don't. Please don't go out with that. Please don't like that.
I think what helps is that you're also seeing him as also more from Deku's point of view,
Yes.
and Deku does kind of he idolizes Bakugo.
And that's an interesting twist, right? Because Bakugo is his bully. Let's like be very plain about that. Bakugo is his bully to some degree, at least early on in the series, right? But Deku like partially doesn't take it as bullying in some ways, and also idolizes him. Like he is awesome,
Yeah.
and he is.
It seems like he sees something in Bakugo that pretty much nobody else can, and like it's been a long time since I read the first part of the manga.
Yeah.
But I think even back then I was kind of like, what is he seeing that
Yeah.
we are not?
What is it? Why is Deku a better person than me? Because I hate this dude. Yeah, right? That's an important thing. Because like one of the things you see with Bakugo is that a lot of people don't like him. Or at least he has the potential for a lot of people to not like him. And I would say that's an important distinction. For one big reason, which is a lot of people like Bakugo anyway. And not just like people like you people. anime fans, not sorry. But like, also people within the context of the show like Bakugo. Which, if you're in high school, do people like bullies?
Yeah.
It depends on who your bully is. If your bully's Regina George, no one likes Regina George, but like everyone likes Regina George, right? Sorry, it was a Mean Girls reference. It's an anime con. My bad. But like, right? Like, people like Bakugo despite the fact that he's kind of awful. And he succeeds despite being interpersonally kind of terrible.
There is a part of Bakugo where he thinks he's not strong enough to be the #1 hero.
Yeah, and that's an interesting one. And maybe that's the second bullet point maybe a little bit. But right, Bakugo cares a great deal about being powerful, about being skilled, about being the best, right? Which, like, he's a shonen protagonist, so duh. But that's a character motivation, isn't it? And, not for nothing, the society they live in incentivizes that. Like, there's a lot of characters in the show that just have dumb quirks that are not interesting or not useful.
That's what I was gonna say.
Mineta, he sucks. I'm sorry if he's your favorite character, but he sucks.
Mineta is no one's favorite character.
He's my favorite character.
No, he is somebody's favorite character, and I would argue that it says something about a person if they're their favorite. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm not gonna target you. But Bakugo lives in a world in which your usefulness of quirk, your power, is a good thing, even if you are a not good person.
Like Endeavor.
Like Endeavor. Endeavor's the #2 hero, and is awful as a human being. He is one of the worst human beings in the series, which includes people that are like, I'm just gonna like teleport people and be evil and blow people up and disintegrate them. Like, that's not great. But Endeavor like has a sort of redemption arc and like, fine, whatever. Yeah, right? I like the immediate like visceral like, eh. Me too, right? But this is that world. And I think that makes sense. That like Bakugo is the way he is for a reason. But it's interesting, because we meet Bakugo's parents, right? What are Bakugo's parents like?
Next thing you know, he just gets slapped in the back of the head.
Yeah, his mom is just like him, but his dad is like really demure and like.
His dad is a very gentle, like almost, compared to Mom and Bakugo, like he almost doesn't exist.
Yeah.
He's so like
He
reserved
still
and
has traits
passive.
of him too.
I don't
Because
even know
when he does
Bakugo's
the
dad's
healing,
poor.
Yeah.
he ends up showing compassion even though he's doing it through anger.
Yeah, and
He's
so that's
just
an interesting
compassionate
piece.
in his own way.
Yeah, it's like,
Yeah.
I mean, if you go and look back, I don't know if everybody's seen this far, when they go do the provisional license,
Hmm?
he tells the people who are basically pretending to be injured
Yeah.
to go save yourself, and they took it away like, oh, well, we're not that injured, we can just go and run.
Yeah, which is an interesting interpretation piece, because like also maybe we're giving him too much credit, but
Yeah.
how you are being read matters, right? Because your intent doesn't always match your impact. Bakugo could be a bad person, but a good hero. Does that make sense?
Right.
Like, you can be a good person and do a lot of good in the world, and be a total jerk. There's a lot of them out there. Some of them are doctors, but like,
I feel bad for the kids who are gonna like him in the future.
yeah, but that's an interesting piece. Like, who would look up to Bakugo? And we have an immediate answer to that. Deku.
Yeah, and
Right.
you also, I might be a little bit too far ahead. Never mind.
I mean, you can redact spoilers
I'm
if you
pretty
feel
sure
important about that. Back to his family for a second, though. We meet both of Bakugo's parents. Bakugo's dad is a pretty chill dude. Like, he works at a like normal straight job. Like, he's a good guy, seemingly, right?
That's actually
Fairly compassionate, whatever. Bakugo's mom is super in-your-face intense, right? And she's like, in some ways, like physically hands-on with him in ways that maybe we don't approve of, depending on what your point of view is.
I feel like Bakugo's mom is basically the definition of a Mexican mom.
I'm unqualified to talk about that. Would you like to keep going? What does that mean?
Yes, please.
I'm curious. I don't actually.
Oh.
So that's part of it, right? Maybe it's a.
You don't want to know.
Okay, that's fair. But that's an important piece of it, right? The like physically, like I think physically disciplining children is sort of not a cool thing, depending on who you ask, like in psychology. But there's something about like Bakugo's mom, like she does hit him physically, right? But it's like, hey, you know, get it together. But I'm not condoning it necessarily. But she's very loving as a person. She aggressively cares about him doing well. She aggressively cares that he does the right thing, that he has friends, that And that's different from Bakugo. Because he's very intense and unlikable and mean in some ways and bullying. And his mom isn't quite that way. His mom cares so deeply and maybe is overly aggressive, overly in your face about it. But I would not necessarily characterize her as mean, as cruel or aggressive even.
She's compassionate.
Yeah, she's compassionate. She has, well, sort of. She has qualities that are different from him. But the important part I would make here is, like, how do you become Bakugo with those two parents? Right? Like, if your mom is pretty, like, in your face, but, like, you know that she just cares about you and wants you to do well, she probably wouldn't approve of the things you do. She probably would not approve of you bullying a bunch of people. She would not approve of you using your powers inappropriately, right? Maybe. I don't know.
You also gotta think, she's also mentioned that she's jealous of his quirk. So,
yeah, and maybe that's part of the dynamic,
Yes.
right? Maybe that's how you get there, partially.
And she also mentions that a big part of the way that Bakugo is because he was so spoiled because he has that quirk.
Yeah, and that's a big one. And that's where I would get into the second piece, right? How do we understand that? Bakugo lives in a world that very purposefully and transparently tells you if your quirk is good, you are good. You have more worth, maybe, not necessarily in those terms, but you have more worth as a person and as a hero or whatever than someone who has a bad quirk.
Which is why the first time that he ever fails anything, he flies off the handle.
Right. And I think that's where we get into the real interesting piece of this. Because he has been told his entire life, since his quirk happened, that he is super rad, that he is so cool, his powers are so good. He's going to go to Hero University or Hero High School, because you don't go to Hero College, I guess, in this universe. There's no Hero Master's degree, which probably is a good thing. You don't want heroes stuck in the education system that long.
They got more studies.
They got work studies, though, right? They got internships, right? But Bakugo has been told from a very young age that he is destined for greatness. You ever met anyone who's, like, real smart and has been told they're smart their entire life, and they are absolutely insufferable? Right? Bakugo.
Yeah.
Yeah, right? Bakugo has been told his entire life that he is great, and he is the coolest, and not just by, like, the universe, not by society, not just by adults, but by kids his age. Kids his age are like, wow, Bakugo, you're the coolest. Like, let's go beat up Deku, right? Like, legit. And notice who he bullies the most. Deku, who has no quirk. What's his big deal with Deku, too? Like, what's the issue, besides the fact that they just don't like each other? Or one of them doesn't like the other?
Just mad that he's on the cinnamon roll.
It's because Deku tried to help him.
I
And
was,
That
yeah,
makes
that's what I was gonna
he doesn't think he needs help from someone that he views as lesser.
Yes, so Deku is at once lesser than him, which seems obvious, right? He has no quirk, kind of a dork, whatever. I'm not saying you should bully him, but, like, I get it, right? He's a dork. He has notebooks about heroes, which, like, didn't we all, but, you know.
Including like an entire notebook, I think, full with just Bakugo.
It's actually
Which is a little creepy, but it's okay.
I think he's just studying his quirk. I think he's just
Right.
studying.
It's not for, like,
I don't
weird,
think
like,
Yeah.
I'ma stalk you and, like, build an effigy of your, like, skin clippings and stuff, but, like,
I had a theory about Deku.
it's a bit weird.
I had a weird theory about Deku.
How
because-
weird are we talking?
You know how he always had bad luck in junior high?
Yes.
It's because that when you realize, if you look closely, his book is number 13.
Oh, so he's, like, unlucky? So he's like a reverse domino?
Kinda cute.
was it on
It's like,
Friday?
his luck is just bad. He was born on Friday the 13th in a thunderstorm. Like, I'm in it. This is my fan theory now.
During a lunar.
It's yours and I just took it, I'm sorry. But yeah, like, not for nothing, Deku is a weak, potentially less valuable person who still wants to help people and care about people. And even though you have bullied him all the heckin' back, still is like, hey, let me help you. Let's do nice things.
That's why he's awesome.
And that's why Deku is awesome.
Yeah.
Fair. Depending on what your point of view of how awesome looks. But yes, that's why Deku is awesome. That's why he's a good person. But for Bakugo, how must that feel? You don't need help. You are the best. And this, like, giant loser who you spend the entire time trying to beat down still is going to be nice to you and still treat you like he likes you. Like you're an equal. in a fanfic way. I don't go that way, but like, yes, accurate. There's a lot of them out there, right? But one of the things that's sort of implied with that kind of a relationship is a sort of mutuality, right? Do you think you're better than your friends?
No.
Sometimes, right?
I mean, my friends are
Sometimes you do. It's okay. We all do it. But someone being nice to you, if you're used to being strong, can look weak. It can make you feel powerless. And the thing is, the human condition is that we are all powerless at some point. But if you're Bakugo, no chance. Don't feel that way. In fact, I will never feel that way again, because if I have a problem, I'm just going to blow it up. Which, like, fair, probably works most of the time with most problems. Like, within reason, right? But, yeah, that probably means something. He clearly interprets his strength as his value.
But it's not to the point where he's too arrogant to go prove it. Because there has been incidences where he has actually thought about it. Even in the first season when
Thought about it, yeah.
When the Nomu and all the people attacked and everything.
Yeah.
When he was talking to Kirishima, acting like, you know, the asshole he is, he
Call a spade, yeah.
Somebody who has an invisibility quirk came up on him, and his instincts immediately took in and attacked him, and he went completely calm.
Yeah,
And there was also other incidents other than that, because even when he went to go face Deku the second time, he's even called it out, saying how he was jealous of him and that how he's very observant that clearly All Might give him his power.
Which is interestingly self-referential, right? Bakugo at the beginning of the series has like almost no capacity to self-reflect on like the thing he's doing, or at least we don't know that. Because I'm being unfair. Like everyone has the capacity to self-reflect unless you're like a sociopath. But different panel. But the more we understand about Bakugo's internal experience, the more we begin to see that maybe he does have those self-reflection capacities, and that he starts to use them more indifferently. And said it earlier of like, it's a lot about like, he fears being inferior, right? He clearly has an inferiority problem because like Deku starts to get superpowers and he's like, wait, what? That guy got into my class? Like, what? But I would argue that that's not just a Deku problem or a Bakugo problem. That's a society problem. He goes to Hero High School. There's going to be someone who's better than him. Or at least close to being better than him, right? And that's a problem if you're Bakugo. Because if you've been told you are the coolest your entire life, and then it turns out you're not. You're not the most powerful quirk. You're not the coolest. And that's the thing, is like it's going to go off at some point. That lifestyle can't survive your entire life without some mental gymnastics.
I mean, look at his grenades. He expresses it.
Yeah, and like it's interesting that like, and this is like sort of a like chicken or the egg created character this way kind of a thing, but like he's explosive.
Right.
It's part of his personality. It's part of his quirk, right? And like, of course, that's how you would make a show, right? Like the explosive character has an explosive temper, duh, right? But he is physically aggressive. He blows stuff up in excess of what is required, right? He uses his powers in ways that are not strictly required to get the job done, and does overkill, which he gets told, right? They're like, you can't just blow up every city block while you're fighting a villain. That's not how it works. You have to save people. You have to do these other things. And part of that is like normative growth stuff, but like he meets characters that are equally or more powerful than him that will excel at faster rates. Maybe he is more powerful than Deku at the beginning, but Deku catches up, and Deku like has special techniques and all this other business. And Bakugo has to actually do the work. He has to actually try to keep up with people. And like that's hard if you've been told your whole life you're just naturally gifted. You don't have to try. You just walk out there and do whatever you want, right? And I think that's part of why you see the change. Which maybe gets us into like, what do you want to happen? And I know the show is still ongoing, but like, what do you think should happen? How does this person do better?
I think what I've seen a lot of people say is that they're just waiting for the moment where he reaches his hand out for Deku.
Yeah, and that would mean a lot, right? To be the person that actually goes for it rather than the person that receives it.
Because he took Kirishima's hand when they saved him from the League of Villains. But and Deku
Yes.
even said that it had to be Kirishima because he's not gonna take my hand.
Accurate. Yeah.
Right.
Also, Kirishima's like totally rad, but like,
Oh yeah.
I enjoyed that his like thing is like, I'm just super masculine and tough. And it's like,
I love my
Super
friends.
manly.
and also I love my friends. And like
I'm hard but soft.
that's a positive goal. I'll be on board with it. Yeah.
Wait.
Not in a fair enough way.
But I think that moment would signify a lot of things. Of like, not only is he just okay with it, but he's willing to show it to other people. Because that's the thing, you can personally be okay with a lot of things and think a lot of things, but if you don't share those with other people, how will they know? And it's funny because over the course of the show, or the series, you can see that sort of change, right? Like, early on, and this is like from the data books, which are like, I don't know what the canon of that is, but like, in the first one, there's like a teamwork category, and he has like a straight up F in teamwork, because he's just the worst, and no one wants to work with him, and he can't work with people. And like later on, his teamwork score gets better, because he's better able to deal with people, coordinate, he's less of a jerk. In the recent manga stuff, like there's even like, they're working together in teams, and he like sort of leads his team to a point. And like he does it in a jerky kind of way of like, well, I'm clearly the only one that can get this done, and like you do this and you do this. But it takes something to even volunteer to do that. Like what he could have done was just like, screw you guys, I'm gonna go out and do the work, and y'all can just like lollygag around. I don't care. Yeah, like he could treat people like they're just pawns, and he doesn't care. And I think that's a big deal. And the other thing I would say is like mentorship, right? They have the internships, they have work study, they have all this. Be connected with somebody who either shows you one way or the other what's going to happen to you. Whether you're connected to somebody who's going to be like, look, there's a different way. Be nicer. Like, be a better person, damn it. Right. Or the opposite. Like, if you see somebody who is a raging jerk, who is just the worst, and you realize that, like, I don't want to be like them, that would be an equally powerful moment. To be like, I just don't want to be like that person. I should be different. Because you've all been there, right? You've all seen somebody who's like lived the life you're about to, and you're like, nah, I ain't gonna do that. It's like the premise of like the scared straight stuff of like, you're gonna go to prison, it's bad, right? Like, which it doesn't work, by the way, but like, that idea, can he get some sort of message from somebody that he'll listen to? And maybe he'll listen to some people more than others, and maybe that's a big deal. But like, he listens to All Might to some degree, right? Respects him even. He's big, he's powerful, he's the best. He's the reason why he wants to become a hero, right? In the same way Deku does, by the way, but also, if All Might's like, bro, you're being kind of a dick, like, that would probably mean a lot more than everybody else being like, yeah, you're kind of the worst, like, be nicer. And, you know, maybe that would be crushing, like your hero tells you you're kind of the worst, but like, also that's a kick in the pants to like, do better, be different, right? So that feels like that kind of makes sense to me. Anyone have other ideas before we get into free-for-all mode here? We have some time, but we're about to get to the lightning round of this. Yeah.
I was saying something kind of fun with like Bakugo. Like we know from like, you know, episode 1 of the anime that like Deku is the one that's going to be #1 hero. So
Arguably. I mean, I assume that's the plot of the show.
Yeah,
you could already
says
tell
the
by
story of
episode
how
5.
Oh, is that what it is?
Episode 1, yeah.
You're right. I
Yeah.
forgot about that. Good call.
And he narrates.
Anyway, we know.
He narrates his own series, which is kind of egotistical, but like, here we are.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
pops in, he's like, that's the moment that we know is like, where you come from? And I forgot you're narrating.
Spoilers, man. Jeez.
Yeah.
It's like, got all the wonder years in here all of a sudden. Like, why are you narrating your own life? This is strange.
It's like the ominous.
But yeah, it's an interesting point, right? Like, maybe we know how it ends.
Right,
Maybe we know that, like, he doesn't. Like, Bakugo never becomes #1.
right.
He's another nib.
Oh.
Ouch.
I just hope if he has a
Maybe-
syphilis, just don't use it.
Maybe someone will die when they're #1, and then he'll be bumped up by default. That would be
I
fine.
get the feeling they'll probably go back and forth.
Yeah, and I'm sure that, like, it's not going to be as cut and dry as all that, but that's an important observation, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Unless they're
this is arguably Deku's story about how he becomes this thing, right?
I haven't seen
And it's not necessarily Bakugo's story, but to a point it is.
Right, and we know about more like what I was trying to get. It's more like we know that eventually, like, he is not going to be, you know, what he's aiming to be. Anyway.
Yeah, and there's a lot of interesting work psychologically around how do you make sense of that? Because the thing is, like, almost nobody becomes exactly who they're thinking they're going to be.
Right.
And that's not a bad thing, because sometimes you think you're going to be the wrong thing.
Right.
And sometimes life just happens, you know. Or sometimes you become the thing you thought you were going to be, and then you just wanted to be something else anyway.
Right.
But there's a lot of work to be done in that. How do you deal with it? How do you become this person? Like, if anyone saw Avengers Endgame, I think it was, like, Thor's mom is like, everyone fails at becoming who they're supposed to be. The trick is you have to become who you are.
Right.
Like, who you're...
Yeah, I didn't understand that movie because I didn't watch anything.
that would leave you in the dark a little bit. But that's sort of the point, right? Like, if we know he's never going to be exactly who he says he's going to be, why don't we work on getting him to become who he's actually going to be, who he actually is, or has been the whole time? Right? Because I would argue to say that there are positive character stuff underneath him being kind of terrible.
Right.
Because, like, no one is truly irredeemable unless they're, like, a sociopathic axe murderer or something, or like Hitler or whatever. But, you know, I think there's some argument to be made there of, like, okay, well, maybe if you don't be that, what are you going to be? There are different ways of being, right? And then maybe that's a big deal. So now we enter into the time where this is free-for-all mode. I could do something if no one wants to say nothing, but I imagine y'all have opinions about anime characters because you are at an anime convention.
Don't tell me that is Nina.
Yes, it is Nina from Code Geass, who you may recognize as literal the worst, according to the internet. You know how I got this list? I literally Googled, like, anime characters no one likes, and, like, just put it up here. So, like...
I feel like Lolo should have been one.
I cherry-picked a little. So, like, okay, we got, like, Kawashima from Toradora also, which I didn't want to put 2 Toradora characters in here, but I could have, because I can talk about Toradora for, like, 3.5 years. Shinji from Evangelion, the greatest, the OG, like, wow, I hate that person so much.
Shinji never bothered me. But I watched the show when I was really young.
There's like 2 brands of people that watch Evangelion. The first brand is like, oh my god, this is the worst and I hate it, please stop. And then the other people are like, oh yes, everything about this appeals to me.
Sorry.
But then, and like, some people make the argument too of like, he's an unlikable character because he's supposed to be unlikable. Like, most media have at least one really likable character that we're supposed to like and like latch on to, and Shinji is not that character. Shinji is not inherently likable because he's not supposed to be, but that's an artistic choice. So, you know. Also, the main character from Watamu. No matter how I look at it, it's your fault that I'm not popular. It's kind of a mess. Yeah. But you can feel free to any character from any anime. The joy of this is I don't have to have seen it, and no one else in this room has to have seen it either. That is the real joy of this. You can tell me about any anime, no matter how complex, how many years ago, how much I've not seen it, and as long as you explain it, we'll be able to talk about it. Now, if you're not able to explain it super well, then we're going to have a hard time. But you can literally go any anime you've ever seen, and as long as you can talk about it, you could be the one to fill in that first bullet point, then we'll do a good job. So these are 3 things, right? So as long as you can do that first one, you can tell us the details, the rest of us can join in. So I'll give y'all like a minute here before I like start talking about what I like. Because it's my panel, I can do that. But who's got one? Complicated, character you don't like, character you do like but no one else likes.
Shinkuri Nishima from Danganronpa.
Oh.
Haven't seen it, explain.
Okay, so...
Who's this character, what do they do?
I haven't seen Danganronpa.
So, basically... Should I start with the show first? Anyway.
If it's necessary to the explanation of the character. If not, just tell me what the character's like. Yeah.
Basically what it is there's a group, high school.
Yeah, they're in high school, obviously, yeah.
They're in high school, and what it is they're trapped inside of this school. And the only way to get out is to, 1, succeed in killing somebody without being caught.
Okay.
And 2, basically just find the mastermind, which in this case would be Judiko Nishima.
Okay, so the character you're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So Words not my thing.
It's okay, me either, and I talk for a living.
So
I listen for a living, arguably, but
you know, through the time and everything, because the way they find who the killer is they have a little court system where they would name evidence, use the facts that they found, and then whatever. Through the series, we find out that Juku ends up actually manipulating a couple of the people who are killers.
Okay, so he's like sort of behind it all, kind of thing, or at least some of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and she has this persona which is called Monokuma. Monokuma is a robot who is announced as the principal in this school, which is just a little bear that's half black, half white. Good side,
I've seen
bad
that.
side.
Yeah. Yes.
And he just basically bipolar as fuck.
As you do. As you do.
My color.
So, but Juku Inoshima, just from what they tell you, she's just an effed up person. She's literally, so in this anime, they're ranked as high school levels. And when I mean high school levels, it's like special talents they have, like animation.
Okay.
Luck is even a skill in this one. She's
sure.
known as the Despair.
Despair?
Despair. So she basically puts the whole entire world to shit.
Just by existing?
Basically.
Oh.
So she originally...
It's like some anti-domino stuff right there.
She literally tries to kill her own sister, and her sister's a high school level soldier, or military brat, whatever you want to call it. And she just has a crazy thing over her sister, and just she's literally throwing a grenade at her while they're in a limo, and she just took it in her little cup and just threw it out the window like it was nothing and continued with the conversation.
I'm so curious how that family happens.
But we don't really have a lot of backstory.
Yeah, and I would imagine that that's the case for a lot of stuff, right? Like for a lot of anime, we don't have a very good backstory. But okay, so like kills people, tries to kill people, is known for being a generally despairing human person.
And she has like a multiple personality / bipolar disorder.
Yeah, so maybe has like a mental health thing that like even makes that different or worse, right?
So she goes like, so they'll be like, you know, the regular like kiddish thing, and then she would have the act, which is basically her pop star version.
Okay.
Then there is the teacher, which she would change her hairstyle and her appearance.
So she cycles through these.
She cycles through.
Oh, okay.
Then there's the crazy like king person or whatever that she goes up and just like is psychotic. And then there's the one where she goes and puts on a cute face and starts saying stuff. She goes everywhere. And literally, she thrives off everybody's despair. She wants the whole world to be in despair.
Interesting. So not just she creates it that way, but she likes it that way. That is a measure of success, to make everyone else's life worse.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So
how do we make sense of that? Or is there more details you want to go with?
I lost my train of thought.
Sorry, my bad.
No, you're good. I'm not really, this is what I'm saying, I'm not good at words. I don't think that well.
I mean,
as
takes a
far as
village.
we know, she doesn't have anything in her backstory or her history that caused her to develop these multiple personalities. It's not really even clear if it is multiple personalities. She said when she gets bored, she changes to a different personality.
And maybe that's an interesting point, because like we don't necessarily have to argue within the logical rules of whatever the anime is, but this is just like wild speculation, like tinfoil hat kind of stuff we can do, right? No, go ahead.
But from what we can see, she literally just wants to watch the world burn for no reason other than it gives her pleasure.
That's basically her love.
And it probably not even that. It seems like she can't really actually feel anything.
And maybe that's part of the point, right? Like, the thing you're describing to me sounds like a lot of mental health things, right? Which, like, anime does that. They put, like, a lot of mental health stuff in there with, like, maybe not always awareness of what that means. But the piece of, like, the boredom and the piece of, like, well, I'm just going to do stuff and stuff will happen. And, like, hopefully it will have a bad outcome, right? Hopefully I will harm someone or I will do this horrible thing, and that will cause more stuff to happen.
And the best part is, even if she's dead, it still happens. Like, because of her, it still happens.
Yeah.
Because she has a bunch of followers and a bunch of, like, people who ended up, like, idolized her and want to continue her journey.
Oh, and she finally killed her sister.
Well, hashtag goals. But sorry, I don't know if that's.
And her sister had no issues with her trying to kill her. She actually loved the fact that Junko was trying to murder her.
But then she was actually surprised.
Yeah, she was surprised when it actually happened.
Yeah. Because
She's
literally
like, me,
first
it's
episode.
not supposed to be me.
I thought I was gonna kill you. Ugh. But that kind of makes a certain amount of sense to me. Not to say like I endorse it and think it's a good thing, but like that makes a certain amount of sense, right? If you're bored with the world and you want everything to be destroyed, like busting stuff up is a form of creation. Destruction is a form of creation, right? You ever heard that one? It's sort of true in a sense. Like she creates something out of that where there was nothing. And if all you really want is something interesting to happen, well, that's all happened in spades. Like, people are killing people. There's murders. You know, the world is worse now. Mission accomplished, right? And not to say that it's a good thing, but that's a consistent character, right? Like, I'm going to switch modes. I'm going to do all these things. And the piece that really gets me is it'll continue whether I continue to do it or not. If I die, it keeps going. And that's immortality to a point, right? And a lot of people look for that in the world, not just in anime, but in the world, even in a non-literal sense. Like, having children passing on your family stories is immortality, right? It isn't, but it is. But I kind of get that piece of, like, if the world is a boring and stupid place and, like, you leave your mark on it, if you do something and change something, that means you existed. That means you did something. And like, maybe that's not the main driver, but that's kind of how it comes off to me. Of like, that makes sense. Of like, just do chaos because chaos. You know, which I think it'd be very easy to be a character like, I am bad because badness. Which, like, we've all seen that anime, right? Like, he's generically like, I am evil. Why? I don't know.
Someone had to do it.
Someone had to be the bad guy. Yeah. But that feels like, even though it's written to not make sense, there's a thread in there that makes it make sense, right? There's a thread in there that's like, yeah, okay, I kind of understand that. I don't know why. I don't know if I think it's good that I understand it, because maybe I shouldn't. But yeah, and the bit of like the mental health and interactions with that is like, oh yeah, okay. Like, you know why people have developed dissociative identities, which is what they call it now, but it's multiple personalities. You know why people develop that most of the time? Trauma.
Yeah, childhood trauma. No.
It's something happens, especially when they're young, and that's a defense mechanism. That's how you protect yourself, right? And bipolar, a lot of people that are bipolar chase the high, but not the low, right? Because bipolar means typically both, right? At least that's the common definition.
Yeah, and you see that when because if you get caught as being the killer, then you die.
Yeah, and you die either by a similar method to what is dealt.
Okay, so ironic punishment, sure.
Or doing something that you love doing.
Also an ironic punishment.
Like, one of the characters, he was he was like a super baseball player.
Yeah.
That was his like special talent, so he gets humbled to death by baseball.
They basically get these giant machines that shoot the ball.
Brutal.
And
At
he
a
just
maximum
does it
speed.
until he just dies.
So even when
That's
she
metal.
eventually gets caught and she decides to take the punishment game, that's what it's called when you get killed.
Right.
She takes the punishment game for herself. She is like super elated and happy. She's like, this is gonna be the greatest despair game ever.
And she goes through every single one.
And like,
Every
you see her
single
sitting in
punishment.
the chair as she's like going towards like the final death, and she's sitting there with the bear and she's just waving by and she's real happy. She's like, I'm cool with it.
All right. Weird
'Cause
flex,
she
but
got
all
beat
right.
at her own game.
But
Yeah,
she also-
but that's an interesting, like,
She also has people afterwards to do that.
But she
Yeah.
also knew she had other people that were.
Because there was even kids who believed that if they killed every single parent and thought art of an expression of basically making them to life my marionette dolls, basically parents of marionette dolls, was the best thing for the world. So she manipulated the kids into thinking killing all the parents is the greatest thing.
and that kind of, that behavior kind of feels like, if you don't have anything inside you, at least you can affect how other people have other things inside of them. Right? Like, the irony of the punishment is supposed to be ironic. It's supposed to be particularly painful in its irony.
But she's like super persuasive when it comes to stuff. Like,
Yeah.
like,
She is very charismatic.
Yeah.
And that's often what you see for people that have internal struggles. Like, they become very persuasive, or they become likable, and they charm people, right? That's the thing for bipolar, for example. A lot of them, like, I will latch onto a person and just like, this is my person now, right? You connect to them so much that they're going to stay with you no matter what, right? Yeah, or like in sociopaths, right? That's why con men and like, you know, specific kinds of criminals, if you're a sociopath, like, you can just lie to people straight up and you don't really have any emotional feeling about that. So like, you can manipulate people that do, because you know the score, you know how the game works, and it's a game is the thing. Like, it's a game. It's, you know.
It's so weird when you first see this game in action.
Yeah.
It was a test run, and it was more gory than anything. Like, if you play the games, it's different from the anime. But if you watch the anime, the first season, the blood is pink.
Yeah.
Then you go and watch the third season. They skip 2 because they need to try to sell their game somehow.
As you do.
And 2 is like probably my favorite ones. But 3 is split up in 2 parts, but each of them have red blood instead of pink blood.
Is that like a censorship thing, or?
Yeah.
I guess.
Because like Tokyo Ghoul, I know
was
in
a
the States they like
censorship thing
inverted the
because
colors to make it
I
not
think
blood.
it had a low rating
one
in
point.
Japan, so they gave it a low rating in America, so they kept the blood pink, which makes kind of no sense because all the deaths are pretty graphic. Anyway.
Right. That you can't see the blood doesn't change that it was a horrific death.
They get stabbed, they get burned to death, impaled.
I think one gets
Star Trek
But through
Hardcore.
every single game, and even if you watch just the anime, so I haven't played all the games, I
Yeah.
played the new one. But going from basically Danganronpa 1, 2, 3, where they had this split into 2 parts, she is a big part in basically the whole entire series. She's the reason why this is a thing.
Mm-hmm.
To the point that
Which I
a lot
imagine
of
feels good
fans
for
are
her.
kind of like, you know, give someone other than Junko as the villain. But some of us are perfectly fine with Junko.
So, like the season 3 or
Yeah.
whatever, or Danganronpa 3, when it's in the anime series, it's split up into what actually happened, how did this all start, to what's happening present time and how is it ending, and then they come together in one episode, relating the two, introducing characters from Danganronpa 2, which
Sure,
again
put it all
was
together.
never mentioned anything unless you watch Danganronpa the Despair arc.
As you do. You gotta do all this extra
And
reading.
There's just a bunch into it.
And
then
Kingdom
it's
Hearts, we're gonna play 4 other games that like aren't.
It's like, there's even the girl, like
We
the,
didn't.
the ones about where the kids basically use the adults as marionette puppets.
Sure.
It's not mentioned at all in the anime.
It's just there.
You'll see the characters. You won't know why they're there
Until
you play that game, because the main
that's
character's sister is part of that game that connects all of it. It's
Oh, I got you. There's like a lot of like interconnected
game.
stuff.
And you get one of the main characters from the first Danganronpa game who joins her, and you're like, why should I care about this character? And
Just
then they
wait.
bring them back
Yeah.
in the next anime.
That's funny. Well, we're gonna get close to wrapping up here, but these are the 3 points here that I want you to take from this. Hopefully 3 things. It's not super hard to remember. But like, again, I've not seen that show, and like, we just talked about it for like 15 minutes, right? And like, this is to say that like, you're not always gonna be perfect at it, but this is a thing you can practice. You can bring this to people, and you're like, hey, let's talk about it. And they're like, I haven't seen it. And you're like, it's cool. I can tell you the thing that you need to know, so we can continue to talk about it. Now, like, don't spoil people on all your anime, because like, that would be rude. But like, within reason, you can do this. So, with that all being said, I will leave you with this stuff here. This is my personal email. You can send me an email if you have questions or concerns or whatever, or if you would like a copy of the presentation. I can always do that for you. Yes?
What's that image?
I love that this is like too many years old now and most people don't get it. Several years ago on Saturday Night Live, there was a Halloween sketch, and one of the recurring punchlines was, any questions? So I Googled any questions and that's what came up. But now it's too old and no one's seen it. The memes are aging before our eyes.
Yeah.
This is what it's like to be old. Anyway. But yeah, so that's my personal email. I am on YouTube and stuff too, so I post presentations of like this stuff. So if you miss a panel or something, I might have it on YouTube. You can watch it. Also, I am doing another panel tomorrow night at 6. where I'm going to try to teach everybody how to talk to their parents, friends, children about anime. Because I know every one of you people has had one of those conversations of like, my parent is like, anime, that's Chinese cartoons, right?
Oh my God.
We're going to work on it.
I don't know how many times.
We're going to work on it. Don't worry.
Why is it all demons?
Yes, exactly.
I remember telling my mom Kirishima was quirky, and she was like, what?
What does that even mean? What's a quirk? It's a word. It's an English language. You know
No, I
it.
said power, and she was like, and I said hardening, and she was like,
Yeah.
and she was
Don't start off.
Not the fanfic.
like, what anime are you watching?
A valid question though. Like, what anime are you?